The song, Eleanor Rigby, is one of the Beatles songs that has interesting lyrics. It is a song by the English rock band The Beatles from the 1966 album Revolver. Over the years, the talks about who wrote the song and the negative remarks against Paul McCartney have caused quite a stir. The lyrics had quite a lot of talk against lonely people, even though the song arrangement and orchestra performance lit. The song itself was consciously written to evoke the subject of loneliness, with a hope that we could get listeners to emphasize, but guess it was interpreted wrongly. Who do you think wrote the song Eleanor Rigby? And what is the story behind the song? We'll dive right into this detail. But before we do so, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exclusive content on the Beatles. Comparing previous Beatles songs with Eleanor Rigby, you could tell there was a difference. The song Eleanor Rigby from the Beatles' 1966 album embodied a shift for the band from pop rock and rollers to a more mature group eager to experiment and harness the power of studio production and emerging technology. The lyrics suggest it's telling the story of someone. Fans had asked if there was a lady named Eleanor Rigby and if she was an actual character. Information has it that Eleanor Rigby was a fictional character, that the two names were chosen by Paul McCartney based on an actress he knew and a liquor store in Bristol. But there may well have been a real Eleanor Rigby, and Annie Mawson says she may have proof. According to Paul, he had said, "I was looking for a name that sounded neutral. Eleanor Rigby sounded neutral." In 2008, a birth certificate for the woman buried in the graveyard of St. Peter's Church, Woolton, was put up for auction. Eleanor Rigby is a fictitious character that I made up. Words going around had it that the song was written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but after so many interviews and seeing the handwritten lyrics of the song, Paul was the original writer of the song. An old piece of paper with his handwriting has shown how he scripted the song. Due to the deep lyrics and the controversies and talks it garnered, lots of people wanted to know the hidden story behind the song. In The New Yorker, Paul McCartney wrote down the story behind all the lonely people in Eleanor Rigby. He said, "When I started working on the words in earnest, Eleanor was always a part of the equation. I think because we had worked with Eleanor Braun on the film Help, and we knew her from the establishment, Peter Cook's Club on Greek Street. I think John might have dated her for a short while too, and I liked the name very much. Initially, the priest was Father McCartney because it had the right number of syllables. I took the song to John at around that point, and I remember playing it to him, and he said, 'That's great, Father McCartney.' He loved it, but I wasn't comfortable with it. Because it's my dad, my Father McCartney, so I got out the phone book and went from McCartney to Mackenzie." The song itself was consciously written to evoke the subject of loneliness, with the hope that we could get listeners to empathize. Those opening lines, Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been, living in a dream. It's a little strange to be picking up rice after a wedding. Does that mean she was a cleaner, someone not invited to the wedding, and only viewing the celebration from afar? Why would she be doing that? I wanted to make it more poignant than her just cleaning up afterward, so it became more about someone lonely, someone not likely to have her wedding, but only the dream of one. According to Paul, he claimed that while growing up, he knew a lot of old ladies partly through what he called Baba Job Week, when scouts did chores for a shilling. He explained that you would get a shilling for cleaning out a shed or mowing a lawn. McCartney said, "I wanted to write a song that would sum them up. Eleanor Rigby is based on an old lady that I got on with very well. I don't even know how I first met Eleanor Rigby, but I would go around her house, and not just once or twice. I found out that she lived on her own, so I would go around there and just chat, which is sort of crazy if you think about me being some young Liverpool guy. Later, I would offer to go and get her shopping. She'd give me a list and I'd bring the stuff back, and we'd sit in her kitchen. I still vividly remember the kitchen because she had a little crystal radio set. That's not a brand name, it had a crystal inside it. Crystal radios were quite popular in the 1920s and 30s, so I would visit, and just hearing her stories enriched my soul and influenced the songs I would later write. Writing Eleanor Rigby has quite an interesting history and dates back in time. Come to think of it, Eleanor Rigby may have started with quite a different name, Daisy Hawkins, or any other name at all. Hawkins seems quite nice, but it wasn't right. Jack Hawkins had played Quintus Arias in Ben-Hur. Then there was Jim Hawkins from one of Paul's favorite books, Treasure Island. But it wasn't right. This is the trouble with history though. Even if you were there, it's sometimes very difficult to pinpoint and get exactly the way it happened. Paul shared that the name is like the story of Eleanor Rigby on a marker in the graveyard at St. Peter's Church in Woolton, which John and himself certainly walked around, endlessly talking about what the future holds. He claims he doesn't exactly remember seeing the grave there, but I suppose it may have registered in his head unconsciously. However, the story about Eleanor dates back to when Paul and John were both young lads as teenagers. While telling the story in The New Yorker, Paul had said, "I just turned 15 at this point, and John was 16, and Ivan knew we were both obsessed with rock and roll, so he took me over to introduce us. One thing led to another, typical teenage boy posturing and the like, and I ended up showing off a little of playing Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock on the guitar. I think I played Gene Vincent's Bebop-A-Lula and a few Little Richard songs too. That was around the time the Beatle band was formed." Paul had met John with the help of one of the quarrymen, and the rest, they say, became history. What would have happened if the duo had not met? There would have been no Beatles, and in turn, there would have been no Eleanor Rigby. Paul had scripted this song for the first time when he was only 16 years. Based on Paul's story, the name Eleanor Rigby comes from him visiting Bristol, where Jane Asher was playing at the Old Vic. "I was wandering around, waiting for the play to finish, and saw a shop sign that read Rigby, and I thought, that's it. It was as happenstance as that. When I got back to London, I wrote the song in Mrs. Asher's music room in the basement of 57 Wimpole Street, where I was living at the time." Then he was just 16, and he thought to himself, maybe it's time to try and learn to play the instruments properly. He had started writing songs at that early age and was also getting more serious about music, but it was still on the same scale. Get out of here. And when I was in my early 20s, Jane's mom, Margaret, organized lessons for me with someone from the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, where she worked. He went to play Eleanor Rigby on the piano for the teacher. At the time, I was just blocking out the lyrics and singing Ola Nun Taji over vamped E minor chords. In Paul's story, he shares when the song had its big break. Paul had said, "When I started working on the words in earnest, Eleanor was always a part of the equation. I think because we had worked with Eleanor Braun on the film Help, and we knew her from the establishment Peter Cook's Club on Greek Street. Initially, the priest was Father McCartney because he had the right number of syllables. I took the song to John at around that point, and I remember playing it to him, and he said, 'That's great, Father McCartney.' He loved it, but I wasn't comfortable with it because it's my dad, my Father McCartney. So I got out the phone book and went on from McCartney to Mackenzie." He tried getting remarks from so many people. He had said, "Allen Ginsberg told me it was a great poem, so he had to go with Allen." He was no slouch. Another early admirer of the song was William S. Burroughs, who, of course, also ended up on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. They had met through the author Barry Miles and the Indica Bookshop, where he got to see the song take shape when I sometimes used the spoken word studio that we had set up in the basement of Ringo's flat in Montague Square. Paul had been experimenting with tape loops a lot around this time, using a Brunel reel-to-reel, which he still owns to date. However, Eleanor Rigby ended up on the Revolver album, and for the first time, we were recording songs that couldn't be replicated on stage. Some of the other songs like this that cannot be replicated include Tomorrow Never Knows. Burroughs also got to hear the final version of the song. His reaction after listening was beautiful. He claimed he was impressed by how much narrative Paul had put into 3 verses, and it did feel like a breakthrough lyrically. That's all for today's video, guys, but before we end, what do you think about the song Eleanor Rigby? Do you think the song passed across the message it was intended to convey in the lyrics? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. And if you haven't by now, ensure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new updates about the Beatles.